How you doing, everybody? This is Inside Man United, and my name is Rowan Brennan. Thank you very much for joining me. And yeah, I've kind of delayed making a video about the takeover talk, mainly because I was more interested in trying to get things as accurate as possible, as opposed to trying to be first with any sort of breaking news. Because frankly, nobody has a fucking clue what's going on. So anyone that pretends to doesn't. So it's all very much up in the air. It does look like Sir Jim Ratcliffe is going to complete the takeover for the part of the club that he's going to buy. But for how much, we don't know. When it's going to be completed, we don't know. What his manifesto is, we don't know. But on this episode, we are going to go into what we do know. So over the last couple of days, some things have come to light in terms of the impact this might have on the club, the ownership, the progress we're going to be making on sales, backroom staff, the board, etc. So let's get into it. So kicking things off is reputable website Football 365 with an article from Will Ford with the headline: Ratcliffe sends shivers down spines of senior officials who wanted Sheikh Jassim. I don't understand how that's true, because I don't see how any of those senior officials would have survived if the Sheikh came in, because I doubt he's going to want to keep any semblance of the previous regime. So I think they would have had the exact same issues had the Sheikh won. But he goes on to say, there's Mr. Ratcliffe himself. So Ratcliffe looks set to take charge of footballing operations at United through his 25% stake in the club, and the senior officials at the club aren't happy about it. It was announced on Saturday that Sheikh Jassim had pulled out of the process. We're all aware of that. I'm not going to go into it. Sheikh Jassim and Ineos founder both submitted offers to buy the club. Obviously, Sheikh Jassim offered an obscene amount of money that Ratcliffe would not have been able to compete with, but it was for full control, and the Glazers didn't want to sell to him. It's also been kind of rumored that the Rain Group, who was in charge of this takeover on behalf of the Glazers, had told all interested parties to basically remain quiet during the bidding process and to not be speaking publicly about anything, which of course Jim Ratcliffe adhered to. Qataris were getting a little bit impatient, and there was some things coming out of the Qatari camp as to, this is our final bid and we're not going to be kind of taken for a ride. There was also some quotes that they were going to try and, you know, invest in the club, clear the debt, build a new stadium, build new training facilities, invest in the local infrastructure in the greater Manchester area. So a lot of people were hoping that the Sheikh would come in and take over, because it was just a fresh start, no debt, new vision, deep pockets, and just a complete kind of erasing of the previous regime. And people were really looking forward to that. But it seems, and I've heard rumors, that the Glazers' nose got bent out of joint a little bit. The fact that the Sheikh had basically called their time at United a bit of a disaster, having turned, you know, a once great club into something that's not so great anymore. And I think that kind of pissed them off. But again, how true that is, I don't know. But it seems it bent their nose out of joint a little bit that this happened. So a report in the Times yesterday insisted that the British billionaire Ratcliffe is set to complete a deal for a 25% stake of Manchester United. Some outlets saying 1.3 billion, others 1.4, others 1.5. All that proves to me is that nobody knows what the fuck is going on. We've got ballpark ideas in terms of price, in terms of the stake, but we don't have any sort of a manifesto as to what his involvement is going to be. But it does look like he's not a silly man. He's not a foolish man. He's very heavily involved in various sports companies. He does have an ownership of Nice. He does have an ownership of another club. I'm not quite sure who it is. He's also involved in motor racing with Mercedes. I think he's involved in sailing and a few other types of things. He might even be involved in cycling as well. I'm not overly sure of everything he's got his kind of fingers in, but so Ratcliffe is looking to oversee player incomings and departures when he gains a foothold in the club. And part of that process could involve recruiting a new sporting director, with the future of Man United footballing director John Murtaugh potentially up in the air. He was presumably among the members of senior management at United. They were far more likely to keep their jobs following a Sheikh Jassim takeover rather than an Ineos one. I don't really see how that's the case. However, that's what they're saying. The Daily Mail claims most felt Ratcliffe would quickly install a number of allies in key roles and that they would be out on their ears. The news that Ratcliffe is set to seize control of football operations with a 25% is likely to send a shiver down the spines of senior officials who felt the Qatari bid would allow time for those already in positions to show what they could do. Well, to be honest, they have shown what they can do, and that's the square root of fuck all, because they're completely unprofessional. Now, I don't know whether that's because they're also at the mercy of the Glazers. So Murtaugh and Arnold can't really do much because the Glazers aren't giving them clarity on what their transfer budget is, what they're allowed to do, what they're not allowed to do. So you don't really know if the lads aren't at fault, where it's really the Glazers because they just keep dicking around with stuff. But I don't really believe that. I just think that John Murtaugh and Richard Arnold have proven themselves to be completely out of their depth with transfer kiddies, etc. It's also saying that Eric Ten Hag is very much in favor of Ratcliffe coming in. Now, of course, he's going to say that. That's his new paymaster. And, you know, if he's going to be taking care of football, he wants to be on Ratcliffe's good side. But it seems that he does curry a lot of favor and goodwill with those within the halls of Ineos at the moment. So Ten Hag is safe. And it looks like he's not going to be going anywhere anytime soon. So just more stuff here from Sky, and just more about the club. And, you know, it's the same recycled nonsense over and over again on a lot of these websites. Gary Neville made a great tweet on what he believed. Actually, let's go in and have a quick look and see what he says. And it's the last piece of this that it's a very long tweet. Gary's not known for his short statements, but I like his last statement, which is, how does a minority shareholder stop cultural decline across a whole organization if the people who have overseen this decline still have a majority shareholding? It's a great point, and one I fully agree with, and it's very well said. I don't know how much sway he's going to have, but I mean, a change is needed. Maybe the Glazers have recognized they need to get in something new to try and turn around the fortunes of the club. And there's also talk that this is going to be a slow takeover, that there's going to be a full takeover in 2026. Is that on this article here? I'm not too sure. Stuff about the Sheikh should buy Liverpool. Could you imagine? Jesus Christ. It might be here, actually. Yeah. So on Football 365, the Brits' latest bid is worth an initial 1.5 billion. So again, a differing amount. No one really actually having any real insider confirmation as to what the hell the amount is going to be, but it see him get a 25% stake. This deal would see Ratcliffe take control of footballing matters at Manchester United, and it's already being suggested he's looking to recruit a new director of football. It's also believed that the Ineos chief will look to take full control of United by 2026. Maguire has indicated he's a financial expert who's been asked to throw in his 10 cents on this, or 2 cents, whatever you want to call it. He's indicated that Ratcliffe's 25% deal doesn't make logical sense, and I would fully agree with this. And he's explained that there is a huge downside. The Glazers are no doubt very greedy, but we have to be cautious when referring to the Glazers. They don't have a hive mind. These are 6 kids. They've inherited daddy's business, many of whom want nothing to do with the football club. They just want to take their money and ride off into the sunset and drink pina coladas until, their hair falls out. So Darcy wants something to do with this. Avram and Joel are very keen to have a more hands-on approach. So in terms of the price, they're probably asking for too much as they don't need to sell. They're still hoping that somebody will be smoked out to put in a higher bid. And now apparently Sheikh Jassim has said that it doesn't matter if this Ratcliffe deal falls apart. He has got no interest in coming back in. I think he's been so pissed off and exhausted by this process. There's talk of him going in to buy Tottenham. There's talk of him going in to buy Liverpool. And it's obvious Liverpool have kind of committed to a sale. FSG have kind of made it quite known that they're willing to kind of get out of the footballing game since last year, I believe. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him come in and buy Liverpool and go, all right, Joel and Avram, let's go head to head and see what we can do here. I would hate to see that. So the 25% stake deal with Jim Ratcliffe doesn't make any logical sense. He's not a young man, so why make yourself wait until 2026? Now, listen, he's just turned 70. 2026, he's going to be 73. He's hardly, Mr. Burns. He's not being held together with sellotape. He looks reasonably fit. His mind seems to be very, very as sharp as it has always been. Yeah, he's not young, but I mean, the guy could be around for another 15 years, quite conceivably. He's still got a very sharp mind. You still see him moving around the place. I mean, he's just because you're 70 odd doesn't mean you don't have a right to have a 3 to 5 year plan to buy a football club and be able to enact and enforce and have some sort of vision come to fruition. So I think that's a little unfair of them to say that. I mean, a 73-year-old man is, you look at all the, politicians and high rollers and billionaires in the States. A lot of them are 70 plus, and they're still very much about what they do. So I don't understand the point he's trying to make there. There's also a huge downside in that if he's only going to acquire 25% stake and the Glazers are looking for an exit route in a few years, they're not going to invest in Old Trafford. Now, that does make sense. I mean, if I knew I was going to be leaving in 3 years, why would I be spending my money and investing in something that I'm planning on getting rid of? I mean, if you're planning on, getting rid of your car, you don't start putting heaps of money into it if you're planning on getting rid of it. That's someone else's problem. Sell it for what you think it's worth, and then they can put the money into investing it and making it what they want it to be. I'm not going to do that if I'm going to be selling. So, that does make a lot of sense to me. So yeah, that's the end of it for that article. And then on this here, what it means for United's transfer budget. Again, playing on the same kind of theme. It's left a clear path for Ratcliffe, who's previously tried to buy Chelsea, and while he's walking up a different one than perhaps he first envisaged, his move for a 25% stake is a smart business decision to give him a United foothold. So again, this seems to be a slow process. The guys still want to have their fingers in the United pie for the next few years, and he will hope to have some sporting control and the opportunity to turn on-pitch fortunes around. I imagine he's going to replace some of the elements of the board. And ultimately, that is the rub. Ownership woes are a little less painful if there's football success to enjoy. So where does this leave Ten Hag and the United squad? Okay. So the Dutchman's job is secure. We've already gone over that. So you can see here with FFP rules, on the pitch, United will not suddenly be awash with an influx of cash. Exactly. So the debt will remain in the absence of new ownership. To plow funds in will continue to hurt United in the transfer market. FFP rules allow owners to extend a 15 million loss limit across 3 years to 105 million via an equity contribution or a commitment to make a payment for shares. The Glazers won't be doing that. So they're not going to be putting any of their own money in. See, that's the thing. If the Sheikh came in and put his own money in, you're allowed to invest a certain percentage of your own money to kind of offset FFP rules. Not only are the Glazers not putting in their own money, they're fucking taking out money from the club, which is also affecting FFP. So, I mean, when people are talking about these guys being fucking vampires and just sucking the lifeblood out of this club, they are, to the detriment of the club. They don't give a shit. If they're going into an orange grove, they're not there to farm the grove and make it profitable. They're going in to suck the juice out of every single orange there and then leave a decaying heap of fucking skins behind them. That's all these guys give a shit about. They only want to put enough juice in the car to get it to a point where they can just take more out of it, strip it for parts. Fucking rats, these guys. They really are. They're horrible. Now, the thing is, people are giving out about Ratcliffe going, oh, his takeover has meant the Glazers stay. It's not Ratcliffe's fault. Oh, his deal has allowed the Glazers to stay. The Glazers wanted to stay. His deal gets him in the door. So there's a different way you can look at this. It's not like Ratcliffe decided that the Glazers were going to stay. They own the fucking club. They decided they're going to stay. They had a route out for a huge chunk of money from the Sheikh and decided not to take it for various reasons. And there's just rumors circulating. It wasn't enough. They still wanted control while still getting some cash. They got their nose bent out of joint when they made comments about United being restored to their former glory, indicating that the Glazers had taken it away from its glorious, lofty position, which is completely true and obvious, but maybe they just didn't want it being said publicly. So it's not Ratcliffe's fault. I mean, a year ago, would you have taken Ratcliffe coming in, getting 25% and maybe beginning a takeover process? Yes, you would have. It's just when you've had the Sheikh and all his billions and the promises and all the kind of the dreamlike scenario that was dangled in front of all United fans, this now seems to be a bit of a disappointment, which is disappointing. I wanted a deal where there was a total takeover. I didn't want it state-owned, but, that seems to be where we need to be. I mean, look how well Newcastle have responded to this influx of cash and responsible ownership from Saudi. Now, it's still early days, but it's going pretty well so far. City, an incredibly run club. Newcastle, an incredibly run club. These state-owned clubs are incredibly well run. Like PSG seems to be the outlier now. Everyone thinks that these petro states, when they come in, it's going to end up like PSG. Yes, PSG is an example of what can happen, but they're in a non-competitive league, and they just had this gross approach to just buying players with no footballing strategy. They just thought they could, buy the most expensive ingredients, and all of a sudden it's going to make a good dish. But if it's not balanced, it's not balanced, and it wasn't. I mean, they had Neymar, Mbappe, and and Messi up front. I mean, that was, that's childhood fantasy dream team type stuff, and it didn't work. It didn't work at all. It fell flat in its face. But these people involved in the English leagues, they seem to have put, their money where their mouth is, and they've run the clubs well. Newcastle, they haven't spent gross amounts of money. They've invested intelligently, they've spent well, they've done their research, and they've put together a very good team. But they've also brought in a manager who's been able to train and get the best out of the players that were there, that weren't performing under the previous regime. They've put faith in a manager. Like, they didn't just, spunk money on Conte or, Allegri or some big name because they just read about him in a newspaper. Oh, he did well at Juve a few years ago. Or what about this lad? Yeah, he seems to be good. Yeah, throw him in. They gave Eddie Howe a lash, and man, he has run with it. That could have been a Graham Potter situation that we had at Chelsea, but it hasn't been, and it's worked out very well. So it says here Ratcliffe might be in the door, but huge investment in the playing staff is unlikely, and United must continue to tread a financial line. So that's why people are so pissed off. There's no white knight riding in to save the day and hand over a blank checkbook. I'm not looking for a blank checkbook. I just want the debt gotten rid of. It's not like we're Newcastle where we need this huge influx of money. United have a huge amount of money. It's just being sucked out of the club by those pile of bastards. That's just the way it is. And apparently why Ten Hag is excited about Ratcliffe is that he's just hoping that the board gets cleared out and there's a little bit more clarity behind the transfer strategy and what they're going to be doing going forward and how they're going to formulate a transfer strategy going into each window and trying to have a long-term plan of how much money is available, who are we getting rid of, how much are we getting rid of them for, what's the kitty. There doesn't seem to be anything like that. United seem to just be kind of playing it by ear, minute to minute, and just reacting quickly. I mean, just look at our transfer success since Ferguson and Gill have left. It's been a fucking disaster. Name 5 good transfers that United have had in 10 years. Bruno. This is pre-Ten Hag. Bruno. Maybe Ibrahimovic, bar an injury. That's about it. Varane, I wouldn't consider him a success. 40 million quid and he can't play more than 3/4 of a season. And he hasn't been overly convincing in other games that he has been fit for. So Varane, I wouldn't consider a success. And maybe Dan James, because we sold him for a profit, not because he did well on the pitch. I defy anyone watching this right now. Please leave in the comments another pre-Ten Hag, post-Fergie transfer that has worked out. And apparently there's been something like 57 transfers in that time. And I can't name you more than Bruno Fernandes and Ibrahimovic that have been even remotely a success. Name me one other, please. I'm all ears. So that's pretty much it for the takeover talk. And yeah, that is everything that's available out there. Anything else is kind of, bullshit or clickbait. There's so much garbage going around Twitter. Sure, remember before the announcement, all the Twitter channels with the Qatari flags waving around Old Trafford. This is imminent. This is going to happen. Name your source. I have a source. Who is it? Oh, I know it. Wait, time will tell. It's garbage. So just be careful who you watch, what you look at, what titles you click on, because the more this bullshit is supported, the more it proliferates. So try and stay away from the sensationalist kind of stuff, which is claiming to know something everyone else doesn't, because the likelihood is they don't, or they're just making it up. So that's kind of why I waited a little bit of time for a little bit more information to come out than had originally before I kind of made a video and made any comments on this. So thank you very, very much for joining in once again. Please hit like, hit subscribe, leave your comments. What do you think about the takeover? What are your thoughts? Is it good for the club, bad for the club? Are you glad to see at least some sort of I suppose, dent put into the ownership that the Glazers have? Is it simply not enough? And do you think it just makes existing problems worse with just an extra chef in the kitchen? I'd love to hear your comments. I will be doing another video in preparation for the Sheffield United game. I'm just going to hold off and wait for a couple of the internationals that have still got to be played out before I make my video and make my predictions as to what I think my team is going to be, or what I think Ten Hag's team is going to be. So before I make any sort of preview videos, I'm going to wait for those internationals to be over, and I think that's what most channels are doing at the moment. But yeah, hit subscribe. You'll get a notification as soon as that new episode comes out. Thank you very, very much once again for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next one.